The universe, vast and ancient, stretched endlessly, a sea of stars where countless civilizations had risen and fallen, leaving nothing but cosmic dust behind. For eons, these alien races expanded, built empires, and prided themselves on their wisdom and peace. They developed diplomacy, avoided conflict, and created a delicate balance of power. But then, out of nowhere, came humanity. No one saw them coming. They were a backwater species, insignificant at first glance. Hell, most galactic councils didn't even bother cataloging Earth as anything more than a blip on the radar. The early days of humanity's spacefaring adventures were seen as cute, maybe even admirable. Look at those little creatures, building rockets and tossing satellites into orbit like they had any clue about the real dangers out there. But that's the thing about humans. Underestimate them once, and they'll tear your damn throat out when you're not looking. Humanity wasn't like the rest of the galaxy. They didn't care for the harmonious existence that most other civilizations had worked so hard to achieve. Nope. Humans were different. They came from a planet soaked in blood, conflict, and the need to dominate. Their history was filled with wars, revolutions, and survival by any means necessary. While the rest of the galaxy evolved in peace, humans thrived in chaos. At first, when they were finally noticed by the galactic councils, humanity was welcomed with open arms. The idea was that this young species could be shaped, molded into something that fit the delicate framework of galactic society. Maybe the other races thought they'd civilize humanity, teach them about peace and the higher purpose of life. What a goddamn joke that turned out to be. You see, the problem wasn't that humans couldn't understand the idea of peace. They could, but peace, to them, was just the calm before the storm. It was an opportunity to regroup, rearm, and get ready for the next fight. They weren't looking for harmony. They were looking for domination. And once they realized how weak and complacent the other species were, the galaxy had no idea what hit it. The first real glimpse of humanity's true nature came in the year 2547. Earth had finally developed faster than light travel. The nations of Earth, after centuries of tension, had united under a single banner, the Terran Confederation. Yes, sounds noble, right? A united planet, striving for exploration and the betterment of all mankind. Except that wasn't the whole picture. Behind the curtain of scientific progress and unity, the leaders of Earth had one clear goal: expansion. They didn't give a shit about meeting new civilizations for the sake of knowledge or forming alliances. They wanted resources, planets to colonize, territories to conquer, and they didn't care who stood in their way. The first species to encounter the Terran Confederation were the Volek. These slimy, peace-loving amphibian types lived on the planet Exora, just a hop and a skip away from the Sol system. The Volek were known for their diplomacy and their incredible technological advancements in terraforming. Naturally, they assumed humanity would be thrilled to join the galactic community. The Volek sent an envoy to Earth. They came in peace, bearing gifts, advanced technology, and offers of mutual cooperation. But humans, they saw weakness. When the Volek delegation returned to Exora, their ship was laden with hidden Terran spies, soldiers, and saboteurs. By the time the Volek realized what had happened, it was too late. The human military had already set up shop on Exora's moon, and they weren't planning on leaving anytime soon. The Volek were stunned. They'd never seen anything like it. Humans hadn't even formally declared war, and yet here they were, embedding themselves like parasites. When the Volek finally sent their forces to deal with the human invaders, they were met with a ruthless efficiency that shocked the galaxy. The humans didn't fight with honor. They didn't follow the same rules of engagement that the rest of the galaxy had agreed upon long ago. They fought dirty. They fought to win. The first Terran warships, crude but powerful, unleashed devastation on Exora. Entire cities were wiped off the map in seconds. The sky turned red with the fires of human fury. The Volek, who had believed in diplomacy and peaceful resolution, were not prepared. They tried to negotiate, to offer terms of surrender, but humanity wasn't interested. They wanted the planet, and they took it. The Volek were forced into exile, their homeworld now a Terran colony, renamed New Earth. The galactic community was horrified. This was an unthinkable act. No species had ever annexed another's homeworld so blatantly, so violently. The Galactic Council convened, and it was decided that humanity would face severe consequences. Sanctions were placed, trade routes were cut off, and an ultimatum was issued. Humanity would either withdraw from Exora or face the combined might of the entire galaxy. But that's where the galaxy fucked up. They thought humanity could be intimidated. They thought they could force Earth's hand by threatening them with overwhelming numbers and advanced technology. What they didn't realize was that they were dealing with a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of war. Humans didn't back down when threatened. They didn't fold under pressure. They thrived in it. The Terran Confederation responded to the ultimatum with a single, chilling transmission. Come and get us. And so, the First Galactic War began. It wasn't long before the rest of the galaxy realized they'd bitten off more than they could chew. Humanity, for all its relative youth, had a knack for adapting to new technologies. Within months, they had reverse-engineered the alien tech from Exora, improving it, weaponizing it. The sleek, elegant ships of the other species were suddenly no match for the brute force and relentless aggression of Terran warships. The battles were brutal. Entire fleets were decimated by human forces. They didn't fight like any other species. Where other civilizations aimed to disable or neutralize their enemies, humans aimed to destroy. Planets were bombarded from orbit without a second thought. Civilian casualties were considered acceptable losses in the grand scheme of conquest. But it wasn't just the raw firepower that made humanity so terrifying. It was their mindset. While other species fought to protect their homes, their way of life, humans fought for something much darker. They fought because it was in their nature. Conflict wasn't just a means to an end. It was the end itself. In a matter of years, the Terran Confederation had carved a path of destruction through the galaxy. The Galactic Council's Grand Coalition, made up of over a dozen species, had never faced anything like the Terran war machine. For centuries, the galaxy had been governed by a loose understanding, respect for life, preservation of culture, diplomacy over destruction. But the humans didn't give a shit about that. They were relentless, tearing through sectors like rabid wolves among sheep. As the Terran Confederation expanded, the galaxy's once orderly, peaceful existence fell apart. The Council, desperate to save what was left of their so-called civilized galaxy, started losing faith in their centuries-old doctrines. They realized they couldn't win the war with their old tactics. They needed to match the brutality, the ruthlessness of humanity. But there was a problem. The rest of the galaxy wasn't wired for this kind of all-out war. They hesitated when humans never did. They debated when humans acted. It didn't help that humans were adaptable in a way the Council had never seen before. They learned fast. Too fast. Within the first few years of the war, humans were already improving upon the technologies of the elder species. Their crude plasma cannons were upgraded to hyper-accelerated railguns. Their ships, once basic in design, were now faster, stronger, and more heavily armed. Every battle with the humans was a chance for them to get better, to perfect their techniques. Meanwhile, the Council forces were stagnating. Their ships were built for diplomacy, for defense, not for the kind of savage warfare humanity excelled in. And for the first time in their history, the great elder races were afraid. By the year 2553, 5 years after the initial invasion of Exora, the Terran Confederation had expanded their territory tenfold. They controlled entire systems, annexed dozens of planets, and eradicated species that dared resist them. The once mighty Volek were scattered across the galaxy, a broken race with no home, no hope. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't here to coexist. They were here to conquer. But there was more to humanity's dominance than just military might. They were smarter than anyone gave them credit for. Sure, they could be brutal, but they also knew when to negotiate. When humanity took over a planet, they didn't just destroy everything. They offered deals, integration. Some species, too weak or too scared to fight back, chose to join the Confederation. They became citizens of a new empire, forced to adapt to humanity's harsh ways, but spared the fate of obliteration. And with every new species they absorbed, humanity grew stronger. They assimilated alien knowledge, culture, and technology. They used it to advance their own civilization at an alarming rate. What took other species millennia to develop, humanity mastered in decades. They weren't just winning battles. They were evolving rapidly. The Galactic Council knew they were losing. They called for an emergency summit, bringing together the greatest minds from across the galaxy. It was the first time in centuries that so many species had gathered in one place. The council chamber, located on the neutral world of Taurus, buzzed with tension. Representatives from every major civilization were there, each one desperate for a solution to the human threat. At the head of the chamber sat the council's leader, a being known as Archelon, from the ancient and powerful Red Hari species. The Red Hari had long been regarded as the wisest and most advanced of all the elder races. Their cities were older than most stars, their knowledge vast and unparalleled. But even Archelon, with his thousands of years of experience, seemed uncertain. "We stand at the edge of annihilation," he began, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "The Terran Confederation has shown no signs of slowing. They have decimated the Volek, the Orsha, and now the Trellith. Their appetite for destruction is insatiable. We must act now, or face extinction." A murmur spread through the chamber. Many of the species present had already lost entire fleets, entire worlds, to the Terran onslaught. They knew the stakes, but they were paralyzed by fear. For too long, they had relied on their diplomatic immunity, on the belief that no species would ever resort to total war. But humanity didn't play by those rules. Total war is not the answer, one of the representatives from the Zenari Republic protested. The Zenari were known for their pacifist ways, having long abandoned violence in favor of intellectual pursuits. "We must find a way to reason with the humans. There must be something they want besides destruction." Archelon shook his head. "We have tried diplomacy. We have offered peace. The humans only understand one thing: power. If we do not meet them with equal force, they will continue their rampage unchecked." The debate raged for hours. Some still clung to the hope of peace, while others were ready to embrace war. But no one could deny the truth. Humanity was unlike anything they had ever faced. They were a force of nature, unstoppable and unyielding. The question wasn't if they could be stopped, but how long the galaxy could survive against them. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Terran Confederation was thriving. The war had brought prosperity, at least for those on the inside. The economy boomed as new resources flooded in from conquered worlds. The military was revered, its leaders treated like gods. Propaganda flooded every screen, every street corner. Humanity was the rightful ruler of the stars, and anyone who disagreed was the enemy. At the heart of the Confederation was the Supreme Commander, Jonathan Voss. A veteran of countless campaigns, Voss was a legend in his own right. He had been there during the invasion of Ixora, had led the charge on the Trellith homeworld, and had personally overseen the subjugation of more alien races than anyone could count. Under his leadership, the Confederation had become an unstoppable juggernaut. But Voss was no mere warlord. He was a visionary. He didn't just want to conquer the galaxy. He wanted to reshape it. In his mind, humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their rightful place as the dominant species. The galaxy was weak, fragmented, filled with civilizations that had grown complacent. Humanity, forged in the fires of war and strife, was destined to rule. "Peace is stagnation," Voss often said in his speeches. "War is progress. Conflict is evolution." And the people loved him for it. They believed in his vision, in the idea that humanity's brutal rise to power was not only necessary, but justified. After all, if the other species weren't strong enough to defend themselves, then they deserved to be conquered. It was survival of the fittest, plain and simple. Back in the galaxy, as the Council debated their next move, a new threat was emerging. The human forces, now more powerful than ever, had set their sights on the core worlds, the heart of the Galactic Council's territory. If they succeeded in taking these worlds, the war would be over. The Council knew they had to act fast, but their forces were scattered, their morale shattered. It was at this moment, in the darkest hour, that a small group of dissidents within humanity began to rise. They called themselves the Awakened. The Awakened were a small but growing faction within humanity, and they were starting to stir up some serious shit. They weren't your average Terran citizens, happy to ride the wave of conquest and bloodshed like the rest of the population. No, these folks had a problem with the direction things were heading. To them, the idea of total domination, constant war, and treating the galaxy like it was humanity's personal sandbox wasn't progress. It was madness. The Awakened believed in something deeper. They weren't just against the war machine that Voss had built. They were against the very foundation of the Terran Confederation. To them, the endless cycle of violence was leading humanity down a path of destruction. Sure, they knew how to fight, and sure, they recognized the strength that had gotten them this far. But they also knew that when you push too hard, eventually you hit a wall. And humanity, in all its arrogance, was speeding toward that wall at light speed. Their leader, Dr. Elena Reyes, wasn't some pacifist either. She was a former high-ranking officer in the Confederation's Science Division, a brilliant mind who had helped develop some of the advanced weapons humanity now wielded with such terrifying efficiency. But something had changed in her. She had seen firsthand what unchecked power did to people. She'd seen entire species wiped out, planets reduced to rubble. And for what? Resources? Territory? No. To Reyes, it was all bullshit. The war wasn't about survival or evolution. It was about feeding the insatiable egos of those in charge. The Awakened had started small, underground meetings, secret communications, the kind of stuff that Voss's security forces didn't notice at first. But as the Terran war machine continued to rampage across the stars, more and more people began to question the direction humanity was headed. It wasn't long before the Awakened gained foothold, not just on Earth, but on the colonies as well. Their message was simple. If humanity didn't stop, didn't pull back from the brink, they would destroy themselves along with the rest of the galaxy. While the Awakened gained momentum, Jonathan Voss remained oblivious to the growing threat within his own ranks. He was focused entirely on the upcoming invasion of Zeltria Prime, the crown jewel of the Galactic Council's core worlds. Zeltria was more than just another planet. It was the political and cultural heart of the galaxy. To take it would be the ultimate blow to the Council, a declaration that humanity was unstoppable, that their reign was inevitable. The Council knew Zeltria's fall would signal the end. Every remaining species, every fleet still capable of fighting, was deployed to defend it. The Zeltrians, one of the galaxy's oldest and most revered species, were a proud race. They had lived in peace for millennia, their cities towering spires of glass and light, floating above the surface of their lush, green world. To the Zeltrians, war was an abomination, but even they understood that this was no time for principles. If they didn't fight, their home would be wiped out like the others. As the human fleet prepared to launch its final assault, the Awakened made their move. Dr. Reyes and her inner circle had spent months infiltrating key positions within the Confederation's military. Engineers, scientists, soldiers, even high-ranking officers sympathetic to their cause had secretly joined their ranks. Their plan wasn't to defeat humanity outright. That was suicide. Instead, they aimed to expose the truth, to show the people of Earth and the colonies what their leaders were really after. Not survival, not evolution, but power at any cost. On the day of invasion, the Terran fleet hovered over Zeltria Prime like a dark storm cloud, blocking out the stars. Thousands of ships, bristling with weapons, ready to rain fire down upon the ancient world below. The Galactic Council's defensive fleet, a ragtag collection of ships from every remaining species, stood in their way. It was a pitiful sight, honestly. The humans had more firepower in one battleship than most of these poor bastards had in their entire fleet. But the defenders didn't retreat. They knew this was the last stand. In the command center aboard the TSV Indomitable, Jonathan Voss watched the scene unfold on a massive holographic display. His lips curled into a smirk. It would be over soon. One final push, and the galaxy would be his. He turned to his second-in-command, Admiral Marcus Tyrell, a battle-hardened veteran who had been at his side since the beginning of the war. "Admiral," Voss said, his voice calm but commanding. "Signal the fleet. It's time to show these bastards what real power looks like." Tyrell gave a curt nod and began relaying the orders. The human fleet surged forward, engines roaring as the first wave of ships prepared to engage the enemy. But just as the first salvo of plasma fire erupted from the Terran ships, something unexpected happened. Across the fleet, alarms began to blare. Systems were going offline. Weapons powered down. Ships were losing control, their navigation system scrambling, sending them spinning into one another. Chaos erupted as the once organized Terran fleet turned into a massive pileup of malfunctioning warships. On the Indomitable, Voss stared at the display in shock. "What the hell is happening?" he barked, his eyes narrowing as he watched his mighty fleet descend into madness. "Sir, we're losing control of the systems," Tyrell said, frantically tapping at the console. "It's some kind of virus. No, it's a fucking coordinated attack on our entire network." It was the Awakened. Reyes and her team had been working behind the scenes for months, planting viruses, hacking into the Confederation's most secure systems, waiting for this exact moment. They had crippled the fleet without firing a single shot. Dr. Reyes appeared on every screen across the fleet, her face calm but resolute. "People of Earth, soldiers of the Confederation, this war is not what you've been told. Your leaders have led you to believe that we fight for survival, for progress. But that is a lie. We fight for conquest, for power, for the egos of men like Jonathan Voss. It's time to wake up. It's time to take back our future." Her message spread like wildfire. Across the fleet, chaos turned to confusion, confusion to hesitation. Some ships powered down their weapons entirely. Others, still loyal to Voss, tried to regain control, but it was too late. The Awakened had disrupted the entire operation. Voss was furious. Shut her down. Now. But it was no use. The damage was done. The invasion of Zeltria Prime had stalled before it even began. And now, for the first time since the war started, humanity's fate was uncertain. The Galactic Council, watching from their fortified positions on Zeltria, could hardly believe their eyes. The unstoppable human fleet, the one they had feared for so long, was now in complete disarray. A flicker of hope sparked among the defenders. "Now's our chance," Archelon said, his ancient voice trembling with determination. "We must strike now, while they are vulnerable." The Council forces, emboldened by the sudden turn of events, launched their counteroffensive. But even as they moved to engage the crippled human fleet, the Awakened were working on the ground, spreading their message to the people of Earth and the colonies. Protests erupted in the streets, riots broke out, and soon enough, Voss's iron grip on humanity began to slip. Dr. Reyes knew that this was only the beginning. The war wasn't over, not by a long shot, but the tides had shifted. Humanity was at a crossroads, and for the first time in years, the outcome wasn't certain. As the battle over Zeltria Prime raged on, Jonathan Voss stood in the command center of Indomitable, watching as everything he had built began to crumble around him. His fists clenched, his jaw tightened. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. "Admiral," he growled, turning to Tyrell, "prepare the final contingency plan. We're not losing this war. Not now, not ever." Tyrell hesitated, knowing exactly what Voss meant. The final contingency plan wasn't just another military maneuver. It was something far more dangerous, far more deadly. But the look in Voss's eyes told him there was no arguing. "Yes, sir," Tyrell said quietly, before turning to relay the orders. And just like that, humanity's darkest secret was about to be unleashed upon the galaxy. The galaxy, and even humanity itself, would never be the same. As Admiral Tyrell punched in the final commands, the entire Terran fleet seemed to shift. The chaos that had been reigning moments ago was replaced by an eerie silence, like the calm before the mother of all storms. The Awakened had crippled the fleet, yes, but there was something deeper lurking in the heart of the Confederation's military machine, a weapon of unimaginable power, one that even the Galactic Council had no idea existed. This wasn't just another superweapon or doomsday device. This was something humanity had kept hidden from even its own people. A relic from the early days of the war, when desperation drove Terran scientists to unthinkable lengths. Something so dangerous that it had been buried deep within the core of the fleet, never meant to be used unless all other options had failed. Voss had always planned to use it. The moment things didn't go his way, the moment he felt even the slightest tremor of resistance, he knew he'd pull the trigger. To him, the lives of millions, hell billions, meant nothing if it kept humanity on top. His reign would be cemented in fire, and anyone who dared to challenge him would be swept aside. The command issued by Tyrell was simple: activate the Cradle of Fire. The Cradle of Fire was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While the Council races had developed advanced technologies for planetary defense, energy manipulation, and even matter teleportation, they had never created something like this. This wasn't about precision or control. This was pure, unadulterated destruction. Hidden deep within the flagship of the Terran fleet, the Cradle of Fire was a prototype weapon designed to harness the energy of a collapsing star. It wasn't just a bomb. It was a device capable of triggering a chain reaction in the very fabric of space itself, creating a localized supernova effect that would wipe out everything in its path: planets, fleets, stars. It didn't matter. And now, as the fleet flickered back to life under Voss's command, the Cradle began to hum, its core pulsing with a blinding, malevolent energy. On the surface of Zeltria Prime, the defenders were still locked in a fierce battle with the remaining Terran forces. But even as the Galactic Council forces pushed forward, they began to notice something was off. The sky above them darkened unnaturally, the light from the stars dimming as if the universe itself was drawing back in fear. Dr. Reyes, still coordinating with the Awakened from a secure underground base, immediately knew something had gone horribly wrong. She had anticipated Voss would retaliate, but this was something else. "Get me a read on their energy signatures," she ordered, her voice tight with urgency. The data flooded in, and her heart sank. The energy readings from the Indomitable were off the charts, spiking in a way that no known weapon should. She didn't even need the confirmation from her engineers. She knew exactly what was happening. "They're going to destroy everything," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Hayes, turned to her, eyes wide with panic. "What the hell do we do, Doc? If that thing goes off, we all die," Reyes finished, her voice grim. "Unless we stop it." But how? They were a handful of insurgents against an entire fleet, and now the deadliest weapon in human history was about to be unleashed. There was only one option left: a direct assault on the Indomitable itself. While the Galactic Council scrambled to regroup and the Awakened fought to disrupt the Terran systems from within, Jonathan Voss stood on the command deck of his flagship, watching the countdown tick away on the screen in front of him. He felt no remorse, no second thoughts. This was how it had to be. "Let them burn," he muttered, his eyes narrowing as the final seconds ticked down. But just as the Cradle of Fire reached full charge, something unexpected happened. A single ship, small and fast, broke through the chaotic mess of the fleet. It was an older model Terran stealth ship, its design primitive by modern standards, but perfect for slipping through the cracks of the Confederation's defenses. Reyes and her team had stolen it months ago, and now it was their last hope. Inside the ship, Reyes sat at the controls, hands shaking slightly as she piloted the craft toward the Indomitable. The plan was insane: board the ship, disable the Cradle, and somehow get out alive. But there was no other choice. If they failed, Zeltria, the fleet, and countless lives across the galaxy would be wiped out in an instant. "We're coming in hot," Reyes shouted to her team in the back. "Get ready to move." The stealth ship slammed into the Indomitable's hull, breaching its outer defenses and sending shockwaves through the ship. Alarms blared as Reyes and her team rushed out of the ship, weapons drawn, moving quickly through the corridors toward the core of the ship, where the Cradle was housed. They encountered resistance almost immediately. Terran soldiers loyal to Voss, heavily armed and ready to defend their commander to the last. But Reyes and her team had one advantage. They were desperate, and they had nothing left to lose. They cut through the guards with brutal efficiency, pushing deeper into the heart of the ship. By the time they reached the core, the cradle was seconds away from activating. "Hayes, shut it down," Reyes barked as the lieutenant rushed to the control panel, frantically working to disable the device. "It's too late," he shouted back. "The damn thing's locked in. I can't. Override it. Now." Hayes's hands flew over the controls, beads of sweat rolling down his face as the countdown ticked closer to 0. 10 seconds. 9 seconds. 8. "I've got it, I think." Just as the final second ticked away, the core of the cradle began to power down, the pulsing energy fading as the device was deactivated. Reyes let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. They had done it. They had stopped the weapon, saved the galaxy, at least for now. But their victory was short-lived. Jonathan Voss, furious and desperate, stormed into the room, flanked by his personal guard. His eyes blazed with rage as he leveled a weapon at Reyes. "You think you've won," he snarled. "This war is far from over." Reyes stood tall, meeting his gaze without flinching. "You've already lost, Voss. The galaxy knows the truth now. Humanity will rise, but not under your rule. This isn't about you anymore." For a moment, Voss hesitated, his grip tightening on his weapon. But then, before he could pull the trigger, one of his own guards turned on him, firing a single shot into his chest. Voss collapsed, eyes wide with shock, as the life drained from his body. Reyes turned to the guard, one of the awakened, who had infiltrated Voss's inner circle months ago. "It's over," the guard said quietly. Reyes nodded, her eyes weary but resolute. "Yeah, it's over." The death of Jonathan Voss marked the end of the Terran Confederation's reign of terror. Without his leadership, the remaining Loyalist forces quickly fell apart. The Awakened, now with the support of the Galactic Council, began the long, difficult process of rebuilding. Peace would not come easily, and the scars of war would linger for generations. But for the first time in years, there was hope. Humanity had proven itself to be a force unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, a species capable of both unimaginable destruction and incredible resilience. They had survived, but at a cost. And now, as the galaxy took its first tentative steps toward a new future, one thing was clear. In the vast expanse of the universe, the greatest power wasn't just in humanity's might or their weapons. It was in their capacity to change, to adapt, to rise above even their darkest instincts.